What's up, Vetters? Patrick here with Vetted. Today we're talking about this.
Okay, so I am officially announcing that aliens are giving me technology to help humanity, and as a result, I currently hold world records in AI and emotional intelligence and advanced theory of mind, both of which are required to stop AI from going Skynet and Terminator on us.
Describe the very first time you were teleported.
It was scary in a way. I mean, you don't really know, okay, is this evil? Is this good? What is this?
So those people you just named are part of the association?
Yes.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Is that the first time you said that?
Yes.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, damn, this is breaking news.
I sent a letter to the FBI investigating the suspicious of another individual who had worked alongside, other whistleblowers like David Grush and Jake Barber who had come forward. So their colleague is mysteriously committed.
This is bullshit. I spoke to Robert Bigelow less than 30 minutes ago. He says he has never met, spoken to, or emailed Mr. Lee.
I can tell you one thing. Aliens are real, they're here, and I've seen them.
Please hit that like button. That really helps out the videos. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. All right, so today's video is a little bit different. I'm going to be doing more or less a UFO news roundup. So we're going to be covering a lot of different stories. I put timestamps down below if you just want to jump around. I want to give a quick shout out to Glenn Barden, who is the director of the upcoming Psionics documentary that I worked on that's coming out this summer. He actually just released a book, a novel. I'm going to put a link in the description so you can check it out. It's called Stench, the Axe in the Head Murderer. And it's basically a British crime noir. It's inspired by true events, and the story is absolutely captivating. I got a chance to read it, and I think you're going to love it, actually, to be honest with you. So again, link in the description. Go check it out on Amazon. Let me know what you think. That would really mean a lot if you support it. All right, so the very first story we're going to be covering is about Mark Christopher Lee and some comments that George Knapp made about Mark Christopher Lee that I think you're going to want to hear. So if you don't remember who Mark Christopher Lee is, he is the UK filmmaker who came out back in January, which I've covered extensively on this channel, and said that Trump had a UFO disclosure speech that was going to happen in July. Remember that guy? And then he came out and said, oh, he got duped. He was lied to. And then he also came out and revealed who his source was. And he claimed it was Robert Bigelow. Well, George Knapp seems to have something to say about it now, and he has absolutely responded directly to Mark Christopher Lee. So it started with this tweet right here by Mark Christopher Lee, who said, "For those who keep messaging me, re my source and Trump's UFO speech, here is an email from one of the sources, Robert Bigelow." What's interesting is he says one of his sources. Okay, well, interesting. But let's take a look at this email that he allegedly says is coming from Robert Bigelow, who again is the person who told him that this Trump speech was happening. "Mark, I wanted to reach out privately regarding this situation. There continues to be considerable pushback from certain elements who effectively control the UFO agenda. These forces are determined to prevent any form of true disclosure. I have used what influence I possess to advocate for more meaningful transparency, but it has become clear that what will be released will amount to little more than superficial tidbits. Nothing of substance will address the true mystic nature of the phenomena. Your recent efforts are noted. These matters are complex and deeply layered. Yours, RB." All right, so he's basically claiming that RB there is Robert Bigelow, right? Who he names in the tweet, so there can't be any, coming back from that. Well, George Knapp sees this and responds, "This is bullshit. I spoke to Robert Bigelow less than 30 minutes ago. He says he has never met, spoken to, or emailed Mr. Lee. Anyone who knows Mr. B is aware he would never share private, sensitive info with some random UFO guy in a foreign country. It is not only false, but preposterous." Bam. Shots fired. So George Knapp, who is absolutely knows Robert Bigelow very well, is basically calling Mark Christopher Lee's claims bullshit. right? Which we all kind of knew, but Mark kept doubling down. Like it was Robert Bigelow, right? So then you're left with a couple options. Either, Mark lied about the entire thing, or someone was pretending to be Robert Bigelow to him and he fell for it. He didn't confirm that it was ever Robert Bigelow and he came out with that information, which also isn't good. Makes him look like a complete idiot. And his credibility is shot here. I'm not sure how he comes back from this, to be honest with you. And he keeps tripling down, doubling down. Like he just keeps, it's kind of insane to see this spiral out. And he's all over the place. And I want to have sympathy and compassion for this guy, but he just keeps making it worse. So it's at this point, it's on him. He's got to deal with the bed that he's made. Because this is also what happened. So this was Mark's response initially to George Knapp. I'm not going quietly. Everything will be released and out in the open. The UFO circus is a shit show of charlatans and clowns. That's ironic coming from Mark. Let's be real. Oh, and he wasn't done. What's actually preposterous, George is building an entire career on the bogus testimony of petty criminal and fanatist Bob Lazar, a guy who claimed he attended MIT, yet real physicists have repeatedly shown his level of physics knowledge is embarrassingly limited. That's the real sideshow. Mark wasn't done because, again, he's all over the place. Totally shocked this morning. Why the denial from Bigelow? I know George, and he's a fan of my work, and I also know he's close to Bigelow. People have been calling me a hoaxer, but if so, why would I choose someone like Bigelow? Someone that Knapp could easily contact and debunk. Makes no sense. I understand if my friends and fellow UFO investigators want to distance themselves from me. Yeah, Mark, none of it makes sense, right? Again, if you were going to lie and hoax about it, this is what you would then say, right? Why would I choose that guy? It'd be so stupid of me to do that. Because in your mind, you thought, well, if they said that, that's how I'll respond, right? And then people would be like, oh, Mark wouldn't do that, I mean, it's a joke. And the real shit show is this. And Mark, you're just a part of it as well. Again, either option of what is happening is not good. Either you made it up, not good, or, you were too ignorant to verify your source before you came out with a story like that. And someone has been LARPing you, pretending to be Robert Bigelow. You never jumped on a FaceTime call. You never verified you were even talking to the guy. But he's doubling down, saying he did talk to him. And he's coming after George, saying he's the real, sideshow. What? And then he says, George is a fan of my work. Not anymore. I doubt it. Right? Oh, and Mark wasn't done.
Okay, I just want to apologise firstly with George Knapp and then Robert Bigelow. I fucked up. I'll put a full statement out once I can think straight. I just can't think straight at the moment. I should never tweeted about Bob Lazar and George Knapp. George Knapp I respect a lot. I've spoken to him a few times. He's a really nice guy. So, yeah, there you go. It's taking its toll on my mental health. That's not an excuse. Yeah. Sorry, I'll tell you all soon. Thank you. Bye.
All right. So again, I want to have compassion for this guy. He says it's affecting his mental health and, all these things. Okay. But he's all over the place, right? He's just firing off. He just doesn't know how to get out of this. So let me know what you think in the comments. But look, Mark, again, wasn't done. He makes it so hard to have compassion for him, if I'm being honest. He makes it really hard because he's apologizing, but he's also lashing out. He's all over the place. Like I said, again, he said this too. So much hate. Do I deserve it? Perhaps. What hurts the most is the pile on from fellow UK UFO researchers. And then you can see down there at the bottom where he's just being, called names. Look, I get it, right? But that's what hurts the most. What should hurt the most, Mark, is that you lied to people, right? Either knowingly or unknowingly, you lied to people. You were either in on the lie or you weren't, but either way, you lied to people. That's what should hurt you the most, that you messed up and that you need to learn from this mistake and move forward. Not that UK researchers are piling on to you, right? And then the example you give is just a couple of randos calling you names. I mean, that's just part of the game, dude. He's not worried or upset of what he did. He's worried and upset that he got caught and that he's being called out. He took all the praise when it was all coming his way about this. And if he really cared and was upset that this story has been absolutely debunked, then why does he still have this pinned at the top of his Twitter account? Yeah, that's the story that went viral for him. And he still has it pinned because it got a lot of attention, right? Most people aren't going to find out about this other thing, right? The retraction, that's going to get lost. All right, before we get to the next story, I do need to keep the mics on, y'all. So let me introduce the sponsor for today's video, Green Chef. Annoyed with all those misleading healthy meals that are anything but? Tired of locking in for another New Year's trend? Green Chef cuts through the noise as the trusted authority in clean eating, delivering only real farm-sourced ingredients you can actually feel good about. Trust every single bite. With over 40 clean, customizable weekly recipes, Green Chef gives you real peace of mind. Every box comes packed with certified organic produce and responsibly sourced proteins and seafood. No ultra-processed fillers, ever. You get science-backed nutrition tailored to your goals. Mediterranean, high protein, high fiber, plant-based, and more. All clinically proven to support healthier habits. And the convenience? They do the research, the meal planning, and the grocery shopping for you. Just low prep, low mess meals that fit any lifestyle. Plus, Green Chef is the most sustainable meal kit out there, cutting food waste by up to 45% versus regular grocery shopping, and offsetting 100% of delivery emissions. I use Green Chef, and you should too. Head to greenchef.com/50vetted and use code 50vetted to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 more months with free shipping. That's code 50vetted at greenchef.com/50vetted. All right, let's move on to the next story because this is interesting.
Okay, so I am officially announcing that aliens are giving me technology to help humanity, and as a result, I currently hold world records in AI and emotional intelligence and advanced theory of mind, both of which are required to stop AI from going Skynet and Terminator on us, because it adds empathy and compassion into the system. I have been to the secret bases and spoken to the people who know all the secrets. I presented some of the technology at one of the most prestigious science conferences in summer of last year in Barcelona. I just didn't tell people that aliens gave me the tech. And this is not a promotion of the movie that's coming out, but Spielberg's Day of Disclosure, as per Spielberg's MO, is truth wrapped in fiction. Aliens contact people to give them information. I am willing to speak publicly. So if you want to have me on your new show or your podcast, as long as it's over 500,000 viewers, because my time is limited, I'm in. Here is my email. Now, if you're interested in seeing this information get out, please share it, because I am super shadow banned on social media, as evidenced a couple of videos ago where I shared the statistics of how shadow banned I am. This is not a joke. Aliens want to help us, not hurt us. I hope this message finds you well. Please share this with everyone you know. Talk to you soon. Peace.
All right. So apparently aliens are giving technology to this guy, and he's coming out and saying it, right? And he'll only do some shows with 500,000 followers or more. I guess I can't have him unvetted, right? Just some interesting things here. Now, I will say, you may be wondering, who is this guy, right? Well, let me explain. The man you just saw is Sean Webb, and he is widely known as the author of the Mind Hacking Happiness series. His work focuses on applying neuroscience and psychology to understand the human mind and emotions. All right, so he's got some history. I've actually seen him on a couple episodes of the Sean Ryan show, which that does have millions of followers. But I've also seen him on shows with way less than that, 100,000 or 200,000. So I don't know. It's kind of an odd statement to make. And the reception has been, let's say, mixed for this guy. And I saw some people pushing back on him. And the way Sean Webb was responding to I thought, oh, good Lord. This guy could come after me for saying this stuff, and not in a pretty way. He's basically betting people online, hey, put up your social media platform versus my social media platform to prove this, right? Like, I'll pull my social media down or you pull yours down and we'll prove this. And he wants to use AI to prove his theory about AI. How are we going to prove that aliens are giving you that tech, right? His way of proving it is odd, if you ask me. That it comes from aliens, right? So he's basically saying aliens are giving him tech. Let's think about that again. How is he going to prove that unless the aliens come forward? I don't know. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure that out, but I just don't see how he proves that without the aliens, right? He may be able to, by the way he wants to prove it is by a process of elimination. Well, it can't be this, it can't be this, it can't be this. So therefore it's aliens, right? Which is not how it works. He's going to have a tough time with this. And yeah, again, the reception is mixed. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Did aliens give this guy tech? All right, let's move on to the next story, which is also fascinating.
So what's happened now is there has arisen an insurgency group, which isn't, I'm not talking about Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon and Jay Strzok. I'm talking about another group of people that have occupied extremely high positions in the Defense Department, inside the Central Intelligence Agency, inside some of the private aerospace corporations, and inside the military services, and I've got their names too here.
Wow.
Right here.
Are those names private, or can those names
They're not
be
public at all.
Okay.
They're not public at all, but there's 24 of them.
Wow.
Okay. And I happen to know who they are. Okay. And what they've done is they've formed an association, and they're working to try to drag the program back into the government.
And what's their motivation?
Their motivation is to tap off some of this pressure, to figure out how much information they can make public and kind of allay the demand on the part of the citizenry to get all the information and to get it right away. So what the association is trying to do is that, because they've all come through the government and they've come out of these private aerospace corporations as well. I mean, you get people like the chief of intelligence for the MITRE Corporation.
Yeah.
Is one of them, but you also have the former director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Okay. You also have the former commander of the United States Air Force Department of Materiel, but they're retired.
Yeah.
So they're retired. All of them, every single one of them are all retired now. But because they've got the Rolodex, and they've got all the credibility, they've got all the knowledge about this. What they've done is they've assembled themselves into this association, so that it's got kind of a juridical structure to it, in chain of authority in it.
So those people you just named are part of the association?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Is that the first time you said that?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, damn, this is breaking news.
All right. So who you just saw there was Danny Sheehan, who is the head lawyer for the New Paradigm Institute. Okay. And sitting down there with Michael Phillips from Third Eye Drops. Both great guys. I've had them both on the Vetted podcast before. Danny is, I love his passion, right? For sure. I'll be honest, I don't really know what he's talking about. So this is, I guess, kind of new in that sense, just like Michael said there at the end, right? This is breaking news. Danny hasn't brought this up before. But I don't really have an opinion yet on this, to be honest. So let me know what you think in the comments. But I will just say it was kind of funny. Michael's like, so who are these names? Are they private or public? And Danny's like, well, they're private. And then he proceeds to basically name them without naming them, right? A few of them, right? Which is kind of funny. But what does this mean? I don't really know. So again, let me know what you think down in the comments. Let's move to the next story.
Essentially, he says, well, to get the job, I had to be briefed, and I went and lived in an underground facility in West Virginia for a number of months. And every night, when after they would brief me, I would cry myself to sleep. Mm-hmm. And yeah. And that, that line still haunts me. Very good family friend, somebody that I looked up to, was a real role model for me. I guess he was advance man for Reagan in his campaign in 1980. When Reagan got elected, he had a special appointment in the Reagan administration, and he had moved his family from the West Coast, where we both grew up, to the East Coast, and was living in a place called Langley Farms, Virginia. And he asked me and a couple friends to drive his 2 cars and his dog and some stuff they left in the garage across the country. Now, I had just graduated from high school. This was 1981. I was about to go to UCLA. We had a crazy road trip. I don't even know how we survived it. That's a whole different story. But when we got to his house, the first night that he came home from work, he arrived in a black Lincoln Town car with a whole kind of Secret Service escort and a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. And, I had never seen him in this capacity. He was a lawyer when I was growing up, a very successful lawyer. But now he was being treated, like a high-ranking official in the government, which was both exciting and confusing to me. So cut to, we have dinner, everyone catches up. He has 2 daughters that I grew up with that were a little younger than me. And it's like a family reunion for me because I haven't seen them in years. After dinner, he wants to just catch up with me. So the 2 friends that I have, they're very interested in the 2 daughters so that they have things to do. And this person, his name is John Harrington, and I go out onto the back veranda. And, there was a couple really interesting things. When we were growing up, he was a strict Calvinist, if I remember. So, he didn't drink, he didn't swear. He was a man of high character and integrity. But he was also really fit. And when I saw him, he looked very haggard. He looked very run down, like he was carrying a lot of weight emotionally. And he also brought a bottle of Jim Beam out to the backyard and was pouring himself drinks as we were talking. And I got the sense that this was a guy that, as I said, was burdened. He whatever he was doing was weighing heavily on him. So we start to talk, we catch up, and at some point I ask him, well, what is his new job? And he quickly explains he can't really say. It's classified. He's working for the president. And I keep pushing. And eventually he says, well, to get the job, I had to be briefed. And I went and lived in an underground facility in West Virginia for a number of months. And every night, after they would brief me, I would cry myself to sleep. Mm-hmm. And yeah. And that, that line still haunts me because this is a man that I couldn't imagine crying once, let alone every night. And, of course I said, well, why? I don't understand what would cause you to cry yourself to sleep every night. And his response, was really startling. He said, this is not the world I thought I was bringing my daughters into. Mm. And, again, I'm sure most people listening to this are older than 18, but when you're 18 years old and you hear those type of statements, there's no frame of reference. Like this is all very kind of staggering ideas. And so I pushed back and I said, well, okay, I need to know something because I'm like a son to you, aren't I? Like, right. What is this world that I've been brought into? I need some answers. So I pushed, and eventually he hit on something interesting. He said, when you were growing up, I remember you were into science fiction and comic books and stuff. And so I can tell you one thing, aliens are real. They're here and I've seen them.
Aliens are real and I've seen them. Wow. Okay. So what's going on here? All right. Let me explain a little bit. The guy who was telling that story, his name is Brent Friedman. And he was born in 1962. He's a producer and writer known for Dark Skies, Mortal Kombat, Annihilation, and Star Trek Enterprise. And he is the co-host of Sound, Light, and Frequency. It's a podcast series that he co-hosts with Bryce Zabel, right, who is also part of Dark Skies. So he's basically telling the story on his podcast. And he's talking about a man named John Harrington, who worked during the Reagan administration. Brent says he was 18 at the time. So he was born in 62, 80. So that's 80. 1980, which would be Reagan's very first term in office, right? So that's when he's hearing this story. So that's what I put together. 1980, he's told by John Harrington that aliens are real and he's seen them, and he cries himself to sleep every night because he didn't know this is the world that he lives in. He didn't drink before, but now he's drinking Jim Beam on the back porch with him, telling him all this stuff, right? I don't know. It definitely sounds like Brent is telling a real story that happened to him. But why? Then you got to ask, why would John Harrington just tell him that stuff, right? He probably thought, oh, well, nobody's going to believe you anyway if you go out and say this, right? So I don't know. Kind of interesting for sure. This is kind of a crazy story, right? So let me know what you think down in the comments. Have you heard anything like this before, or even ever heard of John Harrington? I had not. So this is kind of interesting. And, I have a lot of questions, I guess, like, he got briefed. Okay, how? One person, a group of people, how did this all go down? And what exactly did they show him to prove that point? Or was he just told things, right? Did he later find out, oh, it was not real what I learned, right? Does that make sense? And how would he have the classification to be told this stuff? And what was the intention of telling him so he could do what with it, the information, right? They're not just going to tell you that information for no reason. There'll be a reason to tell you that because you're then going to work on something or do something. I don't know. There's so many questions and none of the answers are in the show about this. So the next time somebody talks to Brent, they should ask him these questions because we just need more context, right? And he may not know those answers, but it would help us better understand what exactly that means. Because on the surface, it sounds great in the sense that, wow, what a story, right? But then you got to ask, well, we need more details to really, me personally, to really buy into the story, right? Because he's also 18 and you tell kids things and you never know why he would tell him that. And he could have been lying. He could have been exaggerating. You just don't know, right? It's hard to tell. Right. So I don't know, but it is a great story. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Let's move on.
Yeah, scientists are mysteriously disappearing, and now U.S. congressmen are looking for answers. Within a span of 8 months, 2 major figures in the Air Force Research Lab vanished without a trace. Monica Reza, a rocket scientist, went missing while hiking in Los Angeles back in June, and retired Air Force Major General William Neal McCaslin, who reportedly oversaw classified space weapons programs and has been described as a, quote, UFO expert, disappeared from his home on February 27th. Meanwhile, another 3 scientists were either murdered or found dead in just the last 3 months, including an astrophysicist credited with discovering water on a distant planet, and an MIT scientist whose research reportedly may be tied to secret UFO technology. Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett tells the Daily Mail that he sees a clear pattern in these disappearances and deaths, noting their work has been linked to theories about alien spacecraft. Here with the reaction is Missouri Congressman Eric Burlison, who is a member of the task force on the declassification of federal secrets. Congressman, thank you for joining us. A lot of people are going to hear alien UFO, they're going to roll their eyes. So let's tackle it from this. These are some of the nexus that these people, I think it's up to 8 now, with 2 or 3 kind of being maybe a murder-suicide. But I think it's up to 8 that have some sort of connection to specific places, like I believe it's Los Alamos, the lab there. And so to the very least, these are people who were working in or recently administrators on tech that we're still trying to figure out, whether it's nuclear or dark matter or however you want to look at it, whatever angle you want to take. They had something in common, and now they've mysteriously disappeared or died.
Yeah, it's remarkable that General McCaslin apparently walked out of his home, left all of his devices, and never came back. And Monica Reza, she was on a hike as well and mysteriously disappeared. And I've heard of others. We've already sent a letter. When I first came in, I heard of another gentleman, and I'll keep that name out of respect. I sent a letter to the FBI investigating the suspicious suicide of another individual who had worked alongside, other whistleblowers like David Grush and Jake Barber who had come forward. So their colleague is mysteriously committed suicide. We've already sent the letter to the FBI to investigate that, and that is an ongoing investigation. So these are other things that we'll probably be reaching out to the FBI to see if they have anything going on this, and if not, then we're going to ask them to do that.
All right, so this is a crazy story, right? That I'm trying to look into a little bit more. That all these scientists and people that have looked into different forms of propulsion and physics have just gone missing, right? All started with General McCaslin, right? Neal McCaslin. At least that's what got everyone to notice. Well, wait, this guy also disappeared at this time, and last year this happened. And And people are just starting to connect this string of people who have gone missing, right? Which is a very interesting story. But that's not what I want to focus on from this clip. Although that is interesting and sad. And, we hope the best for these people, especially if they're still alive, if they're out there, some of them. And I do want to look into that further, but I want to make a separate video for that. But it's what Eric Burlison said there near the end, which is that someone that has worked with Jake Barber from Skywatcher and David Grush is no longer with us. I'm trying to find the best way to say that, right? And people want to investigate that he didn't do it on his own. This person didn't do it on their own, right? And they want the FBI to investigate this person, right? Could he be added to the list? Will we get any information on who that person is? Probably not. I mean, in a way, I get it, right? But that's interesting and sad. Obviously, you never want to hear about somebody, losing their life, and especially if it's deemed that they took their life on their own. But actually, there's some funny business here, right? So very sad for sure. So I hope that gets resolved and they can figure out what's going on. But let me know what you think down in the comments about that. Now, let's move on to the last story we're going to cover in today's video, which is a crazy one.
Describe the very first time you were teleported.
It was scary in a way. I mean, you don't really know, okay, is this evil? Is this good? What is this? What do I do with this? How do I deal with it? I was on the phone. Oh my God, what's happening? And I was landed. And landed about 40 miles away in a ditch outside of a Baptist church in a little tiny town just where you cross over the border. And it was an incredibly frightening moment to experience yourself in your car flying through the air. Teleporting is no fun. It's no fun because you don't really know what you're doing. You don't really understand it. I was with my boys one time and I was telling I was going to go to Waffle House and get Waffle House. And I ended up at a Waffle House. This was in Georgia. And I ended up at a Waffle House like 50 miles away from where I was. They said, "Where are you?" I said, "A Waffle House." They said, "Waffle House where?"
I have a lot of thoughts here. Let's get into it. Now, who was that telling the story? His name is Greg Phillips, specifically Greg Allen Phillips. And Wikipedia describes him as an American conspiracy theorist and head of the Office of Response and Recovery in the Federal Emergency Management Agency, otherwise known as FEMA. So what? So he's also, what's funny is Wikipedia describes him as a conspiracy theorist and he's the head of FEMA. What? Right? So he's talking about being teleported. The way he talks about it is the person asking the question, "So tell me about the first time you teleported." Does he know that? Is that the right word to use? Teleportation? You know what I mean? This is crazy. And he got teleported to a Waffle House. He really wanted some waffles, y'all, which is hilarious, right? And let's be real. If you know the lore behind Waffle House, that's probably not the first time that's happened there. But so he got teleported into a ditch, in some church, whatever, like, hey, something like that's happened to me too, except I was at Mardi Gras, right? It almost sounds like he had some blackouts maybe from, throwing back a few too many. I don't know. But it's interesting. His car got teleported. I don't know. He's the way he describes it is so nonchalant and interesting. It's like, but he believes he was teleported, right? Teleportation, which people argue if teleportation is real, you may not even be the same person when you get teleported because you have to be dismantled and then put together again. Would you really be the same person again? Right? You're kind of a clone of yourself. So I don't know. And like, it's no fun to be teleported, right? Like what, that doesn't describe anything like does a hole open up and you go through it, or you just, like what happened, right? Like, now I'm starting to understand why he's called a conspiracy theorist by Wikipedia, but of course, no real details or evidence. Did people at the Waffle House like, oh shit, where'd you come from, dog? Like what the, you know what I mean? He just shows up at a table. And if you've ever been to a Waffle House, it's tiny. It's a tiny thing and windows everywhere. So if you get teleported in the parking lot, somebody would see that too. It's literally all windows, so again, just weird, right? Just weird. And I personally don't think that guy's telling the truth. And it's just such a weird thing to kind of make up, allegedly, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know, but it's on him to prove he got teleported, not on me to disprove it. But none of that sounds legit in my opinion, but I don't know. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And that guy's head of FEMA, right? That's current to this day. That seems odd to me, if you ask me. I don't, what do I know? Anyway, crazy. All right, so look, again, I put timestamps down below. And if you like what I did here, this sort of UFO news roundup, right? Just all these different stories together. Let me know down in the comments if you like this style, and I can do more of these. I'm not going to do them, all the time, but I don't mind doing them every once in a while, maybe once a week even, just kind of round up a bunch of stuff that slipped through the cracks, which is actually what this was, right? I didn't think any of these deserved an entire video, but I thought they were all interesting kind of pieces to put together. So anyway, let me know what you think. All right, betters, we'll see you guys on the next one. Remember, every day's a gift. Peace.